Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday tone tip. Today, we are going to get immensely filthy and play around with the Recto models in the Axe FX3. I'm going to focus on Recto 1 Red because it's my favorite, but there are several Recto models in here to play around with. Of course, based on the real world Mesa Boogie dual rectifier amplifier. This is an amp that I still own. It is a very polarizing amp. You either seem to loathe or love the rectifier, but I've done a lot of recording both with the model in here, Recto 1 Red, and with the real amp. And just to showcase what I think of when I think about a rectifier, I think of this particular sound. I'll play a little clip from my band, Ragdoll. So let's dive straight into it. I've got Recto 1 Red at the stock settings. I'm using some factory IRs here based on a real Recto cabinet. These were shot by York Audio and they're probably my favorite factory IRs in here, number 842 and 848 in the factory tube bank. You can see this first IR is shot with a 57, so a Shure SM57, a dynamic microphone. The second one is shot with a Royal 121, a ribbon microphone. A dynamic ribbon blend is always a recipe for success in my opinion. And I've just gone into the preamp and done a low cut at 80 Hertz and a high cut at 8K to remove the usual kind of boomy low end and fizzy high end. The reverb block back here is the Recording Studio C set to a very short time and a very low mix just to add a bit of ambience. Now, I'm playing a PRS in drop C. Depending on the guitar you're using, you may plug this in at the stock settings and hear it, and it may just do absolutely nothing for you because it'll be too boomy and fizzy and saturated, this kind of sound. It's like the opposite of articulate. It is just super rude and over the top. A large reason for this is actually the design of the amp, and in particular the master volume. On the real amp, you get the master volume to about 2 or 3, and that's as loud as the amp gets. Any further past there on the master volume control, the power amp just saturates and it just kind of falls apart. So my first tip would be to bring the master volume down low because the classic Recto sound is very much a preamp heavy sort of distortion. So let's turn it down below 2 and we'll compensate by bringing the level control up. Let's hear that now. One of my favorite albums of all time, Dogman by King's X, was recorded with an early rectifier as well. And again, that's another song that I think of when I think of the Recto tone. Okay, so first thing, tweaking that master volume control. What I like to do as well is to bring out a little bit of bass in here. And you know, the classic Recto thing I think most people think of as well as very scooped sounding. So let's bring out some bass and let's not scoop it. Let's actually boost up the mid-range. This is something that I used to do a lot on my amp. Let's have a listen to this. You can hear there, it doesn't have a kind of Marshall style mid-range at all, but bringing up the mids above 4 or 5 just really kind of pushes it out into the space where guitar needs to be. Now, my favorite trick with the Recto is to just actually boost them and tighten up that low end even further. Probably my favorite boost for that with the Recto is this grinder boost in the amp block. So let's turn that on. I'm actually going to compensate by bringing the drive control down a little bit and then really pushing the boost level. This makes it a lot more controllable and it gives you a little bit more of a kind of tight modern metal sound. like I said earlier, it's not a very polite sound, but it can be a very, very effective sound in a mix. A few really kind of deep tweaks we can make in here, because a real dual rectifier has a bunch of switches and knobs that you can do to kind of change the behavior of the power amp in here. Let's go to the power supply, and we can play with supply sag in there to kind of emulate the bold or spongy mode. No, not the bold or spongy mode. We'll get to that in a second. To emulate basically the different type of rectification, either solid state or tube. So if you want more of that kind of tube rectifier thing, just bring the supply sag up to about 8, or take it all the way to 10. Why not? Play around with it, find the sweet spot. I really like pairing that with the variac to get more of that spongy mode that you would get on a real rectifier. So take that to about 75%. You will have to compensate with the overall level when you tweak the variac. Let's hear that. Both of these are more kind of feel changes to me, but they do feel really good under the fingers when you do them. Now, personally, with this boost and with these supply sag and variac tweaks, I actually like to turn the master volume up a little bit. 2.2 is kind of my sweet spot with my guitars, and again, we'll just compensate by bringing the master down a little bit. This is getting pretty close to my ideal recto tone. There's just one more little tweak we will make in a second. It's filthy, it's disgusting, I love it. A big part of the recto sound, like I said, is actually the rectifier cabinet as well, and a very unique thing about the Axe effects, the FM9 and the FM3s, we can actually simulate the speaker impedance curve. Now, I have my unit set to default globally to this 5153 impedance curve. It works for most of the amps that I like, but in my opinion, selecting one of these recto impedance curves makes a massive difference, especially the recto straight. Check out the difference. That has this immense kind of low-end chesty thump about it, especially on those palm muted notes. Again, that will work with absolutely any amp you like, but to me that really puts the icing on the cake of this recto character. Another great tip I would recommend is if you're recording with this, either recording separate double tracks or quad tracks, is to blend the recto with another amp, or if you're on the Axe FX3 or FM9, you can just blend in another amp using another amp block. And to me, the recto is all the things the Mark series amplifiers are not. It is just this giant, uncontrollable beast, whereas the Mark series are super tight and refined. So what I like to do is blend the two of them. What we'll do is we will take a Boogie Mark IV style sound. I've got a tone tip about this amp. We've got the V style EQ. We've got the bass and mid really low, as you would with these amps. And what we'll do is we'll bring these two amps down a little bit and we'll just balance them out. So either blend in some Mark tightness to your recto or blend in some recto aggression to your Mark series tone. I would probably go on the other way, so I'm gonna bring the recto down a lot. And I'm just gonna kind of chug away and bring up the level on the recto. Let's hear it. There's so much attitude and character in there, and I find even though this amp in isolation can be a little bit offensive, that's what you want in a heavy rock or a metal mix. So try these tips with any of the Recto models in here. If you want a more refined version of the Recto, I would recommend something like the FAS Modern amps in there. All of these tricks will apply, and go and make some absolutely filthy guitar noises this week. If you've got any specific questions, let me know in the comments section below. Otherwise, I'll see you all next Tuesday for another tone tip. Take it easy.